Hello and welcome everybody to Inform New Hampshire. My name is Dean. This is Richie to my right, my co-host, and our guest Pat Murphy here, who's been on the show quite a bit. We welcome him back anytime he wants to come in. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the inauguration and Trump and a few other things. But first, let me just mention that we broadcast live on, not live, but we broadcast on Monday evenings at 6:30 on Manchester Cable Channel 23. And then we also have a YouTube channel, Inform New Hampshire. Please stop by, like us, and subscribe if you will. And we have a Facebook group called Inform New Hampshire, and you're welcome to join that group anytime. Everybody's welcome. So just real quick, our good friend and patriot Jerry DeLamus is still incarcerated, unlawfully incarcerated, I might add, by the federal goons that came into the state of New Hampshire illegally, and they trumped up charges against him. They kidnapped him. They put him in incarceration. They're treating him poorly, as they do most of the patriots that they incarcerated when they rounded up a bunch of people all around the country for having gone out to the Bundy Ranch and simply stood their ground against an illegal seizure of property out there by the BLM, which was really done by Hillary Clinton and was done for the sake of China as well as Russia, if you include some of the other property in different states. But what they're going after is the land and the mineral rights and the uranium that's under there. So they have all kinds of criminal deals done behind our backs to sell out our country underneath us and literally toss families that have been there for hundreds of years out on the street and steal their land from them. So anyway, that was a mouthful. Don't know how I did all that. But Richie, what would you like to say about the Jerry DeLamus?
One of the things that I want to say, it just came to light yesterday, I believe. The National Liberty Alliance filed a lawsuit, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but I believe Oregon and the Nevada situation were included in that lawsuit. I hope it doesn't come to that before Jerry gets out of prison. I hope he's released in the next couple days, as he deserves to be. It's been about a year now since he's been in prison, or darn close to a year. I think it was February of last year they imprisoned him. But I'd ask you to keep Jerry and Sue in your prayers, and if you have it in your heart to send a little money their way to help out with their legal bills, you can send it to freejerrydelemus.com, and that's JERRYDELEMUS. I spell it every week, but hey, you never know, you got new listeners or whatever. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. And before we start the talk today, I just wanted something new came to light, and I've shared it with both Pat and Dean. I want to share it with you guys too. Although it's been out for a while, it's new to me. Check out David Wynn Miller, the straw man explained, and explained is in parentheses. Start off there, and you might be intrigued enough to go to his other videos. He's a fascinating individual. I don't know what he's saying is true or not true. I'm still looking into it myself. A lot of what he says is true, I know that, but I'm not sure where he's coming from yet. But you might find it intriguing, and it'll open your eyes a little bit. And where do you want to go with this?
Well, we'll start off, I guess, with the inauguration 4 days ago, as many of you witnessed. As Pat described it, a counter-revolution, having usurped the power back into the hands of the American people, we the people, as Donald Trump said. This is a restoration of this, the transfer of power back into the hands of the people. Hallelujah. Trump is an amazing individual thus far, if you ask me, and he's better than I had anticipated all along. He just keeps getting better and better. He is in the face, confronting the international criminals who usurped this country for a number of years, and a good number of years, as we've described on our show many times before. So where do we want to start?
I did want to say one other thing.
Right.
Somebody sent me this today too, and I haven't had a chance to look it up, but it just registered with me. I can't recall the gentleman's name. He's a Republican from Alabama, I believe. Filed legislation to make the American people sovereign again. And I don't know where that is. I haven't had a chance to look at the legislation yet. I think it said that it was going to be, or it went through committee and it's going to be proposed to the House, but I'm not 100% sure of that. And I'm sorry that I can't. I'll try to update it next week, but it's worthy of mentioning. is something else that's coming out of the Trump administration the first week on the job.
I do think I heard something about that.
Yeah. I did send it to you guys, but it was this afternoon, so I don't know if you had a chance to get it.
So, Pat, what is your take on Donald Trump and his ascent to power in this country, and what is he up to, and what's he going to accomplish?
Well, I'll tell you, I think he's accomplished more than any president I've seen in my lifetime or that I can think of, going back to the founding of the country. And he's representative of what Solzhenitsyn said we lacked in the country, which was courage and moral courage, and in particular willpower. He is just an ocean of raw courage to do what he's doing and to take on the power that he's taken on.
Yep.
Now, when I watch him speak, I looked at the crowd in back of him, what he referred to as the establishment, and I thought, as I always think historically, I said, what does this remind me of? And you could see that some looked like they were obviously frustrated and a dour look on their face and they were losing power, but there was another element in there. I think they sensed it. There's a new sheriff in town. And I said, if I had to liken this to something historical, what would it be? I said, I know what it is now. It's looking at the war criminals in the Nuremberg trial. You got the whole slew of them in there saying this is not a good situation to be in here,
Yeah.
and you know that he is going to be somebody that's very firmly in favor of the rule of law, and that's particularly true with his appointment of Jeff Sessions, as the Attorney General. And you know that as they appoint the different attorney generals for the states, this whole corrupt mess that we've had going way back to Bill Clinton and before that is going to come to a screeching halt. So I think that there are a lot of people that they're probably spending some sleepless time over what's going on right now. But he's done just an amazing job.
Now, you remember way back when we were in our early 20s and the Clintons, they fired all the attorneys generals, remember,
Right.
to replace them with the ones that
Right.
they
Sure.
they were going to do their bidding.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't hurt my feelings at all if Donald did the same thing, and he did terminate all the ambassadors.
I just hope that people realize that they have to do something on a local level, that we can't
Yeah.
just rely on a single individual and then his cabinet, being appointed to get everything done, that he really needs some backing. But he's shown that...
We can't rely on him, but we can, as activists, rely on him for his
Yeah.
moral courage, his leadership, and for the top end down that, we'll go bottom up, like the old
Advice.
Van Jones said, top down,
Advice.
bottom up.
That's all.
One of the biggest things that he's done, and the key thing that he's done is he's taken and he's shown the lack of honesty in the press, and he's undermined their credibility to the
Yep.
point that hopefully they're going to disappear. And they're still at it as of today, lying on the amount of support that he had in the election, trying to say it was only 40%, and they're off by almost 20 points on that. So it's that's enormous, because imagine if he would have to go to the media and to try to explain what he wanted to do or look for support or any of that. So
Couldn't do it.
he's undercut them tremendously, and it's a good thing, I think.
Well, the nicest thing that could happen to the media out there, the lamestream media, as they're being called, is they could all go out of business. I don't watch any of them, and I could care less about them. To me, it's like the TSA. I won't get on an airplane because I'm not going to allow the TSA to search me. I'm not a criminal. I'm not a terrorist. But I'll be damned if I'm going to let these people have my Fourth Amendment right. Same with the media. They can go to hell, too. I could care less. Go out of business.
Yeah, they've done a horrific job. Last week we talked about Hollywood, and you look at the stream of actors that are, you wonder what the actual, mental abilities are that they have. And you went through the Meryl Streeps and the Rosie O'Donnells and Schwarzeneggers and a whole slew of them. And it doesn't stop. I mean, Streisand just came out with some great, talk that she gave on Trump, and it was along the lines of the Robert De Niro thing. He's this, he's that, and they just at what point are they going to start to wake up?
Yeah, it's interesting. You don't know, and they're as often as they confront issues, they are simply attacking personalities or killing the messenger, because that's all they got. Their message doesn't hold water. It's not sound, and so they have to attack people with name calling and vitriol. It's just not.
It's been that way in the media for a long time,
Yeah.
and you've always had people that would do it. The last time we were together, we talked about the 1950s and that classic change in 51 that Walter Trohan talked about. But if you look at the first really, really big lie that you had, in this century, it was horrific to cover up. That would be the Ukrainian Holodomor. And they're going to have made a movie, I guess, to be released in February called Harvest of Sorrow, probably based on a Robert Conquest's book on that famine where anywhere from 6 to 10 million people died from 32 to 33. And in this country, there's almost no reporting, or the reporting is a fabrication, a lot of it by the New York Times. And right after the extermination of those people, of course, you have Roosevelt extending his hand to recognize Stalin, where 4 previous presidents wouldn't have anything to do with it because everybody knew that they were a mass murder machine. And the United States will cross this great moral Rubicon and enter a zone where they initially close their eyes and then be complicit in hiding what the actual news is going on in Russia and in Eastern Europe. And that's true all the way up through my lifetime. It was true. It was true all the way through episodes like the murder of the Polish Reserve Officer Corps at Katyn, and then the horrific wars, guerrilla wars that were fought in Eastern Europe from the end of World War II, or from 44 for about 10 years into 54, particularly in Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, in Poland. So it's American people have been cheated of the history of this, and it's become part of.
Well, they're even cheated of their current affairs. I mean, Obama has been at war the entire time he's in office. He's destroyed a number of elected leaders from different countries, and he's installed a bunch of criminals to take over. Mm-hmm. I have a friend on Facebook that I don't mean to go too far off the subject you were just on, but he writes, he's neither a right or left. He claims he's not Republican or Democrat, but he writes this little bit of a funny thing here. He goes, "This Trump guy sounds like a completely diabolical monster. Number one," talking about the Obama change, he says, "Number one," and he's being facetious, "Number one, patients would have the power of portability, protection, and price transparency, cross-state competition, and more choice to drive down premiums and deductibles, and insurance wouldn't be tied to the employer. Number two, patients could move between health insurance plans without penalty each year. Number three, those with pre-existing conditions would be protected. Number four, providers must publish a cash price for services reimbursed from HSAs, empowering patients to compare the prices of procedures. Number five, insurers could not impose annual or lifetime coverage limits. And number six, young adults could stay on their patient's health care plan up to age 26. Number seven, no fines nor having coverage for not having coverage. So you could pick catastrophic and hospitalization or other types of coverage." So anyway, he's being facetious, saying, well, wow, how bad is this complete diabolical monster of Trump, and then just lays it out. This is what these idiots on the left are arguing against, is common sense, fair playing field, helping out the common people, and yet they just can't see it. They won't even read stuff like this, so they're trapped in their own their own propaganda in their heads.
Their process. You watch some of the inauguration, and you see these groups that are out of control, and they're violent, and they're throwing bags of urine and excreta and bricks, and there's all sorts of vulgar language in there that they're on the fringe. You've always had that with the left. You've always had, from the French Revolution on, you've had that. There's an element of nihilism involved in there, where it's a destructive drive, where it doesn't matter that you want to speak to them rationally. They're beyond that, and they actually are not really interested in that. So it's almost like you're wasting your time with a lot of that. Yep. But this media is absolutely they're directly responsible for processing people. I can remember years ago, it's probably 20 years ago, building a hockey rink, and I had a young kid there from Germany. He's a big guy. His name was Hans, and he had a tattoo on the back of his neck, and it was a tattoo of a barcode. And so I said, Hans, I got to know him. I said, what's the deal with the tattoo on your neck? And he says, in Germany, you're all a number. And I said, oh, really? He says, I give you 15 to 20 years, Patrick. He says, you'll be the same. That's about 20 years ago. And you look at all the stuff that's come down the turnpike now, and a lot of it is, it's right through this media that does not report the truth, that manipulates the numbers, that are involved in assisting the wrong people to get into office. And I come back to Trump. He's the one that he's pulled the carpet right from underneath their feet and gone right around them. Nixon did it to a certain degree, and they went after them because he appealed to the average guy, over the heads of the media, and that was supposed to, you can't do that to us because we're this layer of government that runs everything.
Well, I was going to say, Pat, that's where we, the people, have to wake up to the fact. I mean, look at the assassination of Kennedy in '63. Right. You got the Warren Commission, which everybody knows is a bag job now. There were 8 people involved in the shooting of the president, and they covered up and says, "Oh, it's just one guy." And as it turns out, the poor son of a gun, he ended up getting killed by Jack Ruby.
Yeah.
Jack Rubenstein. I'm sorry.
Well, this is what Trump has brought into the opening is that, from especially the end of World War II, you have got corporate elites and you've got socialists and communists that have come together. Even though the former Soviet Union is down, you have more socialists than ever in the history of the world, and those two working together have their own plan for how things are going to be, their plan for the future for everybody. And he's exposed that and said, we're not going any farther. We've been through this whole revolution against the institutions. I'm putting the brakes on, and we're going the other way, and we're going to expose all of this. So you're watching him. It's one of the greatest periods in the history of the world right now. I mean, everybody's affected by this, and the rest of the world is looking at it. So
and I understand people are waking up, but if they just look at the assassination of Kennedy and 9/11, which is even more recent,
right,
where you've got our own government involved in killing 3,000 people and bringing down 2 massive buildings so that 2 people can benefit from the insurance plan.
Yep.
And it was well more than that. It went well beyond that. It had to do with the asbestos in the buildings. But what I'm trying to say is that if people still believe the media and if people still believe our government that they're trustworthy,
right,
they're crazy.
They've been trying to dumb people down since about the 1890s. There's a long history of that, and the different foundations creating, getting into the universities and controlling the academy, and then all the way up through history, and naturally having an influence in what's published and what's not published. It's just been unbelievable.
No, it's true, and we've all been that way. We've all been kind of dumbed down. I have my whole life. My message to the people is simply to open your eyes and look, investigate on your own and find out, because this stuff is, it's bizarre when your own government, and you're paying for it, is doing these types of things.
Talk about bizarre. I'll give you an example of bizarre. I hadn't thought about this, but back in 2012, there was an incident in Pennsylvania, big football state, and you had a high school night game, and the band is in the end zone, and they're getting ready to come out before the game starts, and you look over, and some of them are dressed in like a fatigue green, and some of them have these flags, and these poles with these flags, and they're red, and they've got this big banner, and as the drums start, but boom, 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 they're ready to go, they unroll, all right, this whole big long sign, and it says St. Petersburg, 1917, and there's communist hammers and sickles on each side. And a couple of these kids whipped together these cardboard things. It looked like they were covered with tinfoil or something. And they're a communist hammer and sickle, and they start marching across the field. Now, this is a state it's full of people. Their ancestors from Poland, from Hungary, from Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. They've lived underneath that. It's just like you've got to be. Somebody talked to them at halftime and said, "Hey, listen, I want to tell you something. You really don't want to be doing that."
They didn't know any better, though.
Oh my God. I can't even, it's just amazing, the level of ignorance. And eventually the school said, well, we were just celebrating Russia in 1917. I said, you don't understand. That's Bolsheviki type stuff. There's no place for it here. We don't celebrate them. I mean, what if you came out with a couple with swastikas and the kids had SS uniforms on and they're marching, doing a goose step? Say, what's that? Germany 1933? Come on. It was just crazy. So there's a problem. There's a problem.
Well, some of them probably don't even have the moral compass to figure that out. So it's a sad state of affairs, I'd say.
Like I say, the information's been cut away. If you're going to have a true education, it's going to involve, you're going to study history, you're going to study philosophy, you're going to study theology, you're going to study comparative
Science, math,
you're going to
English, yeah.
comparative economic systems, and you have got to study something about military history. You know, your present academy has what, 1 or 2% dedicated to that, to military history. It's crazy. The kids that I've talked to, they seem to be cut right off from stuff. It's a real shame. Very, very, very much a real shame.
We want to reduce that to the least common denominator, Pat. How many times have any of us gone into a store and the clerk will say, I don't know, it's $3.02, and you give the person $5 and a nickel,
Yeah.
or something like that, and they're, oh Jesus, I don't know what to do. They're panicking because they don't know how to make the change. They can't figure it out.
Well, conservatism is
Some people.
conservatism. If you're a conservative, you value history and the way history grows. That's the key. You base everything on experience. You have a view of human nature where the human being will they have the free will to do what's right or do what's wrong, where that's actually a gift, and you're not a robot. You make that choice. That's what conservatism is, and it's the real cement in a society. That's why when you took countries like the Soviet Union and they went into nations, they went in with the idea of rotting those countries from the inside out. We didn't go with the idea of going to war. We wanted to go into the institutions and cripple those institutions and change the consciousness. So you went into all of the opinion and all the institutions that would work on developing thought and awareness of things. And there was one institution in particular that they would go into. What do you think that would be?
Grade schools.
Wow.
It deals with education. It deals with the print, with the media. They would look for conservative institutions primarily, more than anything. Because as I say, a conservative individual, because of their activity in the community, they are the cement that holds things together. So rather than look for liberal media and press, whom they regarded as not that bright, they would go to conservative media and try to penetrate that, because if you could destroy that or get a handle on that, what you're doing is you're rapidly eroding those things that hold the whole society together. That's why I say when you look at these guys that come out as conservative spokesmen, we mentioned a few of them in here, going back to Buckley and the guy with the big dome head, what's his name? You know, the one you need a Catholic priest for an exorcism when he starts to debate somebody. I forget his name.
I don't know.
I don't know.
But yeah, those are the.
You got to be a little more specific.
One of the Constitutional Convention, they don't obey the law now, so we're going to come out and we're going to have a Constitutional Convention. The ones that are in government now, of course, are not obeying the law of the Constitution, but they're going to give you something better. So I said, well, there goes the flag.
Yeah, but
that's got to be one.
They're going to give us a new Constitution.
Mark Levin. These
Oh,
guys
yeah,
all
yeah,
praise
yeah.
these guys.
Yeah.
I said, you don't understand, you're being massaged. I said, that would be, if you went back into the history of the Soviet Union, they call that active measures. The KGB did that. That's 85%, 90% of what they did. Think about it. People don't understand that. They look at the whole history of espionage, which they do not teach, that it's not so much about spying and getting the mechanical drawings for this aircraft or that battleship or a satellite. It's about affecting the policy making in a nation so that you control attitudes, or you say, for instance, you deteriorate patriotism. You attack all the things that people love, that are the conservative element in the country, the things that make you think the country's worth fighting for. That's really what it's all about. They don't think of it that way. It's about getting into the policy-making aspects of things. You're watching it right now with all the transgender stuff. We've got that professor out in Ontario, Jordan Peterson, and he's a bright guy, 40 years in teaching about dictatorship, and he says, I refuse to use these pronouns that you're giving me, that's 60 or 70, that refer to all different stages of different types of sexuality. He said, this is a language you have created to control reality, and you're forcing me as an individual to do this, and I will not do that. I have the First Amendment right, and he's a guy people should pull up, Jordan Peterson.
That goes hand in hand with that David Wynn Miller, because he's the code that he cracked was the Passe Syntax Grammar Code.
Yeah.
And you'll see how it fits into what you're talking about with Peterson.
Well, you're forced to sit through that ritual people, when they participate in that publicly, and you're forced, let's say in the Soviet Union, you used to wait for the first guy to stop clapping. You watch that in North Korea, and that's not a game. Those people are going through contortions and clapping, and it's going on for hours or days, and the first one to stop is going to be penalized. And they did that with Stalin. They did it in North Korea. So you sit through these semblances, these assemblies, and you're being made to participate in something that you find morally objectionable.
Yeah.
And you look on the other hand, go into places like Canada, and you look at, for instance, their healthcare system. They now have a thing, I understand, called effective referral. And what that means is because they have euthanasia, somebody comes to you as a doctor and says, I don't want to live anymore. You might say, well, listen, I'm a religious guy, or I don't believe in that. You look healthy, I don't want to participate in that. You as a doctor have to give that referral. You have to send him to somebody that will end his life, or you will lose your license. So you're being forced to be complicit in your own moral self-annihilation, that is a Soviet system.
Yeah.
So they're bringing that to bear right on you. Think about this. How many trials have you ever seen in the whole history of Russia after what was done, where they slaughtered millions of their own people? Can you think of any? You don't see that. They effectively get people to turn in on top of each other. Everybody became a participant in that. Families on families, working people on working people, husbands on wives, children on their fathers and mothers on their friends.
That's happening here.
Yeah, mandatory suspicion.
See something, say something.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, we've been spared from the carnage, though, thank God.
I know.
At least that much.
You're taking all those vectors and using them against the American people, in addition with technology. And for instance, in a Soviet Union, that would have been if you were at work and you had an issue with somebody and said, drop dead. The next thing you know is you'll probably be arrested for what they call terrorist. They call it terrorist intent under the rubric of a thing called Article 58, where everybody at every single moment is committing some kind of a crime, and they're infinitely arrestable. You're watching the same thing here.
Yep.
You have the NDAA, and you're going to be arrested in the middle of the night. Nobody knows why, and you're gone indefinitely.
Have you seen one of the top contenders for the new Supreme Court justice?
No.
We're going to see that next week. Trump said he's going to announce it next week.
Yeah.
So that's coming out.
Knock on wood, he's going to keep on doing what he's doing because he's standing up for the Constitution.
Yep.
And he's standing up for the rule of law. And he's made some moral decisions when he says the issue is corruption for decades.
Mm-hmm.
He's exposing the whole thing to the sunlight. It's never been done. Never been done.
Right.
Even with Reagan, not done. He's
We're
beyond
about-
Reagan, I think, by a long shot.
We're about out of time. Anything you want to add, Richie?
No, I just want to thank everybody for watching. Anybody in New Hampshire that wants to join in on a conference call, Sunday at 3:30 p.m., the number is 712-770-4160, and the access code is 998-086 #. We're having a general discussion, but it's a think tank. You want to get involved in it, we can explain it to you then. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you for watching. See you next week. Thank you.